So Article 5, this is going to be the budget article for fiscal 20. We're going to do a separate presentation on this on local cable, so you'll see that separately. And at town meeting, with the moderator's blessing, I'll do almost the exact presentation we'll do on TV, we'll do at town meeting. But we will walk you through the line item adjustments and changes that we made from year to year, and we'll talk about revenue, and we'll talk about the long-range forecast as well. So this year again, second year in a row, we received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association. It's a lot of my colleagues call this the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval for budgeting practices and presentation. So we're honored and happy to have received this once again. So budgetary goals, as everyone knows, we want to have great customer service for our residents at a reasonable cost. We also want to follow local bylaws relative to purchasing and state laws to provide efficient use of the tax dollars that we're provided. So this budget, we will talk in detail at town meeting, and we'll cover a 10,000 foot view today on this presentation, but we'll cover things like demographics, the changes in the budget proposal, the budget detail, and so forth. I'll just tell people now that if you have questions along the way, you can call our office. Finance Committee also takes questions and comments from the public. They have had hearings on this budget. The Board of Selectmen will take comments and questions relative to the budget. But if you have questions during the day or any other time, you can email us or call us. We're happy to talk to anybody at any time about the budget as it's presented. I will make note of Finance Committee and say thank you to them for the work and effort and time they spent going through what equates to thousands of line items, both expense and personnel, to understand them and to listen to department heads so they understand the operational needs of the community from a municipal perspective, if you will. So the demographics of the community are 18,540. The average single-family house went up from 18 to 19 by 3.8%. The average tax bill is $65.30. We do have a single tax rate of $16.66. The residential commercial tax makeup for all of the property tax value in the community is 91% residential and 9% commercial industrial. All real property in the community totals $2.5 billion. So that's all the value for all the parcels and all the houses inside the boundaries of Grafton. The bond rating is a AA plus stable. It just got updated just last week. Unemployment is lower than the national average at 3.4%. And outstanding debt, which is issued to date as of now, is $70,412,000. Majority of that debt is from the sewer department project. It was about $45 million. So that's inside that number as well. So the average household income, we do a little bit better than the state average. The value of a single family home is lower than the state average, which to me just says we have a lot of value in Grafton to purchase a home here. The average tax bill is about $500 more than it is in Massachusetts on average. So the financial stability of the community, and this is just an interesting note more than anything else relative to the tax bill, the population as it compares to other communities, and the DOR income in the far right-hand column just deals with the filed income tax at the state of Massachusetts. So, for example, Oxford has $419 million of filed income tax. Town of Grafton has more than double that amount in filed income tax, almost $1 billion filed in income tax in 2018. So I think that's just an interesting thing in terms of more value as it relates to the burden of taxes and our ability to pay said taxes. So in terms of just the facts, we have a $65 million proposal. It is an increase of $3.4 million, or 5.5%. The areas of growth, there's really three major areas: education, unclassified, and debt service. So education would be Blackstone Valley. Education would be the Grafton School District. The Blackstone Valley went down a little bit. It's a negligible amount of money in terms of their reduction. The local school district, Grafton School District, is $1.5 million. So that's an increase that we were able to get to them. They did request more, but as you'll see through this budget presentation, we had to make a lot of adjustments because we have a limited resource pool in terms of dollars to grow the budget, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Unclassified is health insurance. Things like health insurance, there's many things in this number, but health insurance certainly drove that number higher, as did the assessment from Worcester County for Worcester County Retirement. That was over $200,000. So between those two alone, it was almost $500,000 worth of an increase. Debt service, the sewer department debt, just the increase alone was $743,000. So we do have a 38% increase in debt. It's a combination of adding the library, adding DPW, and the debt service payments associated with those, and the sewer department debt, which that piece was just an increase of $743,000, which the sewer department user fees pay for. There's no general fund or tax dollars that are used for that debt service. Another just important fact, we continue to grow stabilization wherever we can. We try to keep that between 5 and 10% of our expense, of our budget. So that's what we try to do with the 3.6 million. So we want to keep that intact and only use that in certainly a dire emergency. Free cash, it's a term that gets kicked around a lot, but people don't really understand it. But I'll just tell you that if everything passes at town meeting, we will have a balance of free cash of $812,000. Currently, we have 1.9 million in free cash. Free cash is made up of revenue that was in excess of what we thought we would collect, and turnbacks from departments for what they didn't spend, or if they save money on a project or a material that they needed, that money gets turned back, and that becomes fund balance, which then goes to DOR to be certified as free cash. It's a long story, but if you ever have questions on those particular pieces, we're happy to deal with that. This just gives a history of free cash. We're very balanced in this area, from stabilization to overlay reserve to free cash. But again, it just shows the history and a trend that we have a lot of stability with funding our capital plan, which we use free cash to fund that capital plan. We have 8 spending categories: general government, public safety, public works, the sewer department, health and human services, culture and recreation, education, unclassified, and debt service. So those spending categories are where all the $65 million get distributed to. This slide just shows you the town administrator's recommendation for fiscal 20. It shows you the percentage change from 19, but it also shows you on the far right is the percent of the total budget. So out of the 65 million, for example, public safety gets 5% of that number, compared to unclassified gets 12% of the 65 million. So it's a pretty straightforward slide, but I think it's telling that we had a lot of reductions in fiscal 20 from 19 to make the budget work and make it balance. So all new money, this is an important concept for folks. We have new money every year. We're always going to have new money because of Proposition 2.5, but it only allows us to collect 2.5% over the levy from last year. That total is about 900,000, and then we have something called new growth, and that's building permits, decks, sheds, additions, new construction, pools. All year long, we collect that data and we assign values to it, and that value yields tax dollars. We'll get into how much we got last year, but we're estimating 550 for fiscal 20. So when you add the 900 allowed under 2.5 and the 550, we're under $1.5 million in terms of new money just from taxation that we can grow our budgets by. So you can see the total expense, one total expense line exceeded that number of any new tax dollars. They were eclipsed by the education request, and they were eclipsed even by the education allocation that we got. So we had to make a lot of adjustments to give as much as we did to all departments. So we had all new money. We have total revenue of $65,220,000. We had total expenses of $65,215,000. Education took up 1.5 of that growth in expenses. The sewer department, while funded with user fees, we do carry the revenue up in the top for new money. So that 743,501 is debt service for the sewer department and the wastewater treatment facility we just upgraded. Unclassified was an increase. We covered that in detail, both from health insurance and for Worcester County Retirement. The bracketed number of $634 is all town departments, public safety, public works, general administration, legal. We had a reduction from last year of $634. So we didn't zero base budget. We reduced the request to make the budget work. And then we had a reduction in non-appropriated expenses of $328. So the initial request, how did we get to a balanced budget? Everybody requested certainly more than what we had in new revenue. We had a $66,272 request. We only had revenue of $65,220,000. So we had to reduce $1,051,000 to get the budget balanced. So the school's request was cut $339,000. We cut over $700,000 from all other areas to make that number work. And that's how we, this slide just lays out how we did it, and we can move forward on this one. And so revenues, this just shows, the lion's share of our money comes from taxes, from property taxes for this community. 21% is from state aid, and the other 2% is from departmental revenue. Those are everything from liquor licenses to building permits and bag fees. So there's not a lot of room here in these revenue categories. Lion's share comes from taxes. So the expenses for fiscal 20 just gives a snapshot of where the money actually goes. It's important to note with the education piece that the unclassified to the right, that's 12%, that represents a portion of the education expense as well, because there's school employees we cover in health insurance that are covered inside of that budget, but we carry it not inside of education, but certainly inside of the municipal operating budget. And then changes to revenue, 3 real categories, if you will. I'll only cover 2. Pay as you throw, the Board of Selectmen voted to increase bag fees, which should, if bag fee sales stay on the same trend, yield an additional $60,000 for fiscal 20. And motor vehicle excise tax is estimated, and we feel comfortable that can increase by $50,000. So those are the 2 major categories. And then the tax levy, we talked about this a moment ago, the growth from 19 to 20, the levy in 19's $36 million. You get to add in what you're allowed under 2.5, you're allowed to add in the new growth. So we moved that number over to fiscal 20, 37 million plus the 2.5, plus what we estimate the new growth will be. The road stabilization, certainly, we're not adding the 2.5% into that number, but it is part of the levy. So in fiscal 20, we'll have $40,503,000 in which to raise taxes to pay for all these programs and departments. The revenues, very straightforward for the $65 million. Property taxes, $40 million. State aid, $12 million. Local receipts, 6.6. Debt exclusion, $4 million. And then the sewer department budget, because the sewer department raises their own fees through user fees, is just under $1.1 million. So the important points to remember: questions, comments, concerns, certainly call us. Finance Committee voted to put forth this budget and support it as presented. And we have a $65 million proposal. We want to keep service levels consistent. We think we can do that under this budget. We have to be mindful that state aid is 21% of the budget overall. It's $12 million. So we have to be flexible if any of those things were to change, or if there's a downturn in the economy. We have to just be aware of it and be willing to be flexible to make adjustments. So the next article, Article 6, is the FY20 capital budget. So do you want to run through those? Because you're making a lot of deducts from certain articles. I think you should just go through the plan if you have it with you.
Okay, the plan. So the capital plan is posted online with the budget for FY20. It's inside that budget document. The capital plan totals $986,622. That's a combination of public safety, DPW, municipal, school, all projects that were requested, that went through a process, that have been placed on the warrant for consideration in May. every year, what we do is try to liquidate some previous capital articles to offset the free cash that's needed to fund the capital plan in that year. So there can be a balance in articles from previous year for a number of reasons. Typically, it's that when we make the request, it's an estimate, and then we go through a procurement process, and we get a more competitive number than we had anticipated, and then there are funds left over. So there are about 10 or 12 articles that will be liquidated, amounting to about $17,000. So that will come right off the top of that $986,000 that we'll be requesting for capital. And then the balance of that, $970,323, will be requested from free cash to fund that capital plan.
And we'll have a history of the past 10 years for spend. We're between 900, I think the lowest year we ever spent on capital is like 658. And as high as $1.1 million. So we're still, it's not a completely robust program, but we try to fund everybody's most urgent needs. And I think under this plan, we've done that, and we've reserved some of the free cash capacity to pay for leases if we had to finance a fire truck or a vacuum tanker or whatever it was, or we had a sweeper that we did one year. We did Univents when we did the Honeywell program. To augment those programs, we did lease purchase options, and we cut out, top line free cash to pay for those capital items as an ongoing rolling basis, and we're still able to do, an $800,000-900,000 capital plan with just free cash and no other levy capacity,
Right.
other than liquidating articles. So, and when Becca talks about finance committee going through, they get management reports, they see where if we had a car to be bought and we had $27,000 and we only spent $26,500, they know there's $500 there that we can reallocate someplace else. So in terms of tracking through the accountant's office and providing finance committee the oversight role that they have that, and that's why we have these articles available for liquidation to fund the capital plan.